Andrew Powell stepped onto the glittering surface of Naus Prime, his heart racing with anticipation. He was here to secure humanity's place in the Galactic Empire, but fate had other plans. As he gazed upon Princess Keed, daughter of the Nausicaan king Zorthax, Powell's breath caught in his throat. Despite her infamous reputation for unattractiveness, he found himself inexplicably drawn to her. The Imperial Palace loomed before him, a testament to the power and influence of the Galactic Empire. Powell's mission was clear: negotiate Earth's admission into this vast interstellar community. Yet as he navigated the labyrinthine corridors of Nausicaan politics, he couldn't shake the feeling that something greater was at stake. Princess Keed's initial skepticism towards the human ambassador melted away as she discovered his quick wit and genuine interest in her. Their clandestine meetings became more frequent, each encounter deepening their connection. Powell's human colleagues warned him of the taboo nature of interspecies relationships, but he couldn't resist the pull of his growing feelings. As their secret courtship blossomed, Powell stumbled upon whispers of a plot. Rival Nausicaan factions were conspiring to overthrow King Zorthax and block humanity's admission to the Empire. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Powell saw an opportunity to secure Earth's position. He carefully leveraged his growing influence with Keed to gain access to sensitive information about the impending coup. However, their covert rendezvous did not go unnoticed. The king's watchful spy master uncovered their liaisons, setting in motion a chain of events that threatened to unravel the delicate diplomatic negotiations. News of Powell's dalliance with the princess spread like wildfire through the imperial court, igniting outrage among the Nausicaan elite. The once cordial atmosphere on Naus Prime turned hostile as accusations flew. The Nausicaans viewed Powell's relationship with Keed as a human ploy to infiltrate the royal bloodline. King Zorthax, his pride wounded and honor insulted, demanded Powell's immediate expulsion from the planet. Caught in the eye of the storm, the human delegation scrambled to salvage the negotiations. They fought to extract Powell from the increasingly volatile situation while attempting to maintain diplomatic relations. The fate of Earth's place in the galactic community hung by a thread, with Powell's unconventional romance at the center of a potential interstellar conflict. As tensions escalated, Powell found himself navigating a treacherous path. He had to protect Keed from those who would use her as a pawn, unravel the complex web of Nausicaan politics, and somehow turn this scandal into an opportunity for humanity's benefit. The stakes had never been higher, and the fate of two worlds rested on his shoulders. In the grand halls of the Imperial Palace, where alien races mingled and plots unfolded, Andrew Powell stood at the precipice of a diplomatic crisis. His actions would determine not only his own fate, but that of humanity's future among the stars. The Galactic Empire's fury burned hot, but Powell's resolve burned hotter. He had stumbled into a love that defied expectations, and now he would fight to prove that humanity deserved its place among the galactic elite, even if it meant challenging the very foundations of the Empire itself. As the diplomatic crisis threatened to spiral out of control, Andrew Powell knew he had to act quickly. The once welcoming halls of the Imperial Palace now felt oppressive, filled with whispers and accusatory glances. He retreated to his quarters, mind racing with possibilities. A soft chime at his door broke his concentration. Commander James Harrison, his most trusted ally within the human delegation, entered with a grim expression. "Andrew, we need to talk," Harrison said, his voice low. "The situation is deteriorating rapidly. We've received word that the Nausicaan Council is calling for our immediate expulsion." Powell nodded, running a hand through his hair. "I know, James, but I think I have a plan. It's risky, but it might be our only chance to salvage this mission." As Powell outlined his strategy, Harrison's eyes widened. "It's bold, I'll give you that. But how can we be sure we have all the information we need?" A knowing smile crossed Powell's face. "Because I have a source inside the palace. Princess Keed." Harrison's eyebrows shot up. "The princess? Andrew, are you sure we can trust her?" "Absolutely," Powell replied without hesitation. "She's risking everything to help us." Over the next few hours, Powell and Harrison pored over the intelligence Keed had provided, mapping out the complex web of alliances and rivalries within the Nausicaan court. They identified potential allies among the more progressive factions and began formulating a plan to expose the coup plotters. As they worked, an urgent message arrived from Kaid. Powell's heart raced as he read her words, detailing the identities of several high-ranking officials involved in the conspiracy against her father. "This changes everything," Powell muttered, passing the message to Harrison. "We need to move fast." The next few days were a whirlwind of clandestine meetings and careful information sharing. Powell and Harrison reached out to loyal Nausicaan military officers, slowly building a network of support within the palace. General Kavex, a grizzled veteran with a reputation for honesty, proved to be a crucial ally. In a dimly lit corner of the palace gardens, Powell shared select pieces of intelligence with the general. Kavex's eyes narrowed as he processed the information. "If what you say is true, human, then we are on the brink of civil war. But why come to me with this?" Powell met the general's gaze steadily. "Because I believe in the stability of the Empire, General, and I believe Earth has a role to play in maintaining that stability." As tensions within the imperial court reached a fever pitch, Powell knew it was time for his most daring move yet. He requested an emergency audience with King Zorthax, fully aware of the risk he was taking. The throne room was oppressively silent as Powell entered, flanked by guards. King Zorthax glowered down at him, his massive form radiating impossibly strong fury. "You have some nerve requesting an audience, human," the king growled, "after the disgrace you have brought upon my house." Powell bowed deeply, choosing his words carefully. "Your Majesty, I come before you not to make excuses, but to present evidence of a grave threat to your rule." For the next hour, Powell laid out the details of the coup plot, revealing the identities of the conspirators and their plans. As he spoke, he could see the king's expression shifting from anger to shock, and finally to a grudging respect. "And how did you come by this information?" Zorthax demanded. Powell took a deep breath. "It was through my relationship with Princess Keed, Your Majesty. Our connection allowed me to uncover this plot and potentially save countless lives." The throne room erupted into chaos as the king ordered the immediate arrest of the conspirators. Powell watched as guards rushed to carry out the command, his heart pounding with a mixture of relief and apprehension. In the days that followed, the political landscape of the Galactic Empire began to shift. King Zorthax, having narrowly avoided a coup, found himself reassessing his view of the human delegation. In a private meeting with Powell and Harrison, the king's demeanor was markedly different from their previous encounters. "You have done the Empire a great service, Ambassador Powell," Zorthax rumbled. "Perhaps I was hasty in my judgment of you and your people." Powell inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. Earth hopes to continue proving its value to the Empire." The king's eyes narrowed. "And what of your relationship with my daughter?" Powell straightened, meeting the king's gaze. "I care deeply for Princess Keed, Your Majesty. Our connection is genuine, and I believe it represents the potential for a stronger alliance between our peoples." Zorthax was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "I cannot fully approve of such a union. However, in light of recent events, I am willing to suspend certain social taboos. For now." As news of the king's decision spread, it sent shockwaves through Nausicaan society. Traditionalists decried it as a betrayal of their values, while a growing faction of younger Nausicaans saw it as a sign of progress. Powell found himself at the center of a cultural revolution, navigating not only the complexities of interstellar diplomacy, but also a relationship under intense scrutiny. As he walked through the palace gardens with Keed, he could feel the weight of countless eyes upon them. "Are you sure about this?" Keed asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The path ahead won't be easy." Powell squeezed her hand gently. "I'm sure about us. Everything else we'll figure out together." As they continued their stroll, Powell's mind raced with the challenges that lay ahead. Earth's admission to the Galactic Empire was still far from certain, and the delicate balance he had struck could easily be upset. But for now, in this moment with Keed, he allowed himself to hope for a future where humanity and the Nausicaans could stand together among the stars. As the dust settled from the thwarted coup attempt, Andrew Powell found himself thrust into a new phase of his mission on Naus Prime. The Imperial Palace, once a place of tension and suspicion, now buzzed with a different energy. Powell's actions had not only saved King Zorthax's reign, but had also opened new doors for humanity's integration into the Galactic Empire. Early one morning, Powell stood before a large holographic display in his quarters, reviewing his strategy with Commander James Harrison. The room's soft blue lighting illuminated their determined faces as they pored over data streams and diplomatic reports. "We've got a real chance here, James," Powell said, zooming in on a map of key Nausicaan territories. "But we need to move fast. The goodwill we've earned won't last forever." Harrison nodded, his eyes scanning the information before them. "Agreed. I've arranged meetings with ministers Kalor and Vexna for later today. They've shown interest in our terraforming technology." Powell's lips curved into a small smile. "Excellent. We'll start there." The following weeks saw Powell and Harrison engaged in a whirlwind of diplomatic activity. They shuttled between ornate meeting chambers and high-tech laboratories, presenting Earth's technological achievements to wide-eyed Nausicaan officials. During one such presentation, Powell stood before a group of Nausicaan ministers, demonstrating a miniature terraforming simulation. The holographic display showed a barren planetoid transforming into a lush, habitable world. "As you can see," Powell explained, his voice steady and confident, "our terraforming techniques can turn even the most inhospitable environments into thriving ecosystems. Imagine the possibilities for expanding the Empire's reach." Minister Vexna, a tall Nausicaan with striking violet eyes, leaned forward, her interest piqued. "And how long would such a process take on a full-scale planet?" "With combined human and Nausicaan resources," Powell replied, "we estimate it could be achieved in less than a decade." A murmur of excitement rippled through the room. Powell caught Harrison's eye, noting his subtle nod of approval. As their influence grew, Princess Cade became an unexpected ally in their efforts. She used her royal status to advocate for human interests within the court, organizing soirees and cultural exchanges that brought together human and Nausicaan elites. One evening, Powell found himself in a lavish garden terrace, surrounded by the Empire's most influential figures. Cade stood by his side, her presence both a comfort and a statement. "Ambassador Powell," a Nausicaan noble approached, his ornate robes shimmering in the starlight. "I must admit, your species continues to surprise me. Perhaps there is more to humans than we initially thought." Powell inclined his head respectfully. "We're grateful for the opportunity to demonstrate our value to the Empire, Lord Zarvek. I believe our peoples have much to offer each other." As Cade guided him through the crowd, introducing him to key figures, Powell couldn't help but feel a sense of progress. Yet he remained acutely aware of the eyes that followed them, not all of them friendly. The growing acceptance of humanity within the Empire did not go unchallenged. Lord Krasnak, a powerful noble with deep-set eyes and a perpetual scowl, emerged as the voice of opposition. His rhetoric against lesser species gained traction among conservative factions. Powell first encountered Krasnak's influence during a public ceremony celebrating a new trade agreement. As he took the stage to address the gathered crowd, a commotion erupted from the back of the hall. "Traitors," a voice shouted. "You would pollute our empire with human filth." Before Powell could react, a group of Nausicaan extremists surged forward. Time seemed to slow as he saw the glint of a weapon. In an instant, Commander Harrison was at his side, tackling him to the ground as energy blasts sizzled overhead. The Imperial Guards swarmed the area, subduing the attackers with swift efficiency. As the dust settled, Powell found himself face to face with Princess Cade, her eyes wide with concern. "Andrew, are you all right?" He nodded, his heart racing. "I'm fine, but this changes things." The assassination attempt sent shockwaves through the Imperial court. King Zorthax, his face a mask of terrifying fury, ordered an immediate investigation into the attack and its perpetrators. Powell seized the moment to propose his most ambitious plan yet. In a private audience with the king, he laid out his vision for a joint human-Nausicaan terraforming mission. "Your Majesty," Powell began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment, This project would not only showcase the benefits of our alliance, but also expand the Empire's influence to new worlds. Zorthak stroked his chin thoughtfully, his massive frame dominating the ornate throne room. A bold proposal, Ambassador, but the resources required would be significant. The potential returns would far outweigh the initial investment, Your Majesty, Powell pressed. Imagine being the ruler who ushered in a new era of expansion for the Empire. After a long moment, the king nodded. Very well, Powell. You shall have your chance to prove the worth of this alliance. As preparations for the terraforming mission began, Powell found himself working closely with Nausicaan scientists and engineers. The collaboration led to breakthroughs that excited both species, combining human ingenuity with Nausicaan resources in ways neither had anticipated. Yet as the project gained momentum, new challenges emerged. Reports of sabotage at the terraforming sites threatened to derail their progress. Powell couldn't shake the suspicion that Lord Krasenak's followers were behind these acts, but proving it seemed an insurmountable task. One evening, as Powell pored over security reports in his quarters, Princess Keed entered, her face etched with concern. "Andrew," she said softly, "we need to talk." He looked up, noting the tension in her posture. "What is it?" Cade took a deep breath. "There's growing pressure within the court for me to reconsider our relationship. Some believe a traditional Nausicaan suitor would be better for the Empire's stability." Powell felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. He stood, crossing the room to take her hands in his. "And what do you believe?" Her eyes met his, filled with a mixture of commitment and uncertainty. "I believe in us, in what we're trying to achieve, but the road ahead won't be easy." As they stood there, the weight of their challenges pressing down upon them, Powell knew they were at a crossroads. The success of the terraforming mission, the future of human-Nausicaan relations, and their own relationship hung in the balance. Whatever came next would shape not just their lives, but the fate of two species and the future of the Galactic Empire itself. As the sun rose over Naus Prime, casting a golden glow across the sprawling cityscape, Andrew Powell stood at the window of his quarters, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The weight of recent events pressed heavily upon him, but a spark of willpower burned in his eyes. "It's time," he said, turning to face Commander Harrison, who was reviewing data on a holographic display. Harrison nodded, his expression grave. "The terraforming project can't wait any longer. We need to show results, and fast." Within hours, Powell found himself aboard a sleek Nausicaan shuttle, streaking across the planet's surface towards the main terraforming site. The barren landscape below gradually gave way to a patchwork of green and brown as they approached the project area. As the shuttle touched down, Powell was struck by the sheer scale of the operation. Massive machines hummed and pulsed, their intricate mechanisms working tirelessly to transform the alien soil. Human and Nausicaan workers moved with purpose, their once segregated teams now seamlessly integrated. Vexna, the Nausicaan project lead, approached Powell as he disembarked. "Ambassador, welcome. We've made significant progress, but there are concerns." Powell's brow furrowed. "Show me." As they walked through the site, Vexna detailed a series of unexplained equipment failures and system glitches. Powell listened intently, his mind racing to connect the dots. "This isn't random," he muttered, examining a damaged atmospheric processor. "These failures are too precise, too calculated." Vexna's eyes widened. "Sabotage?" Powell nodded grimly. "We need to inform the king and increase security immediately." Over the next few weeks, Powell divided his time between the Imperial Palace and the terraforming sites. He worked tirelessly, coordinating with both human and Nausicaan teams to implement new security protocols while pushing the project forward. His dedication did not go unnoticed. During one site visit, Powell overheard a group of Nausicaan workers discussing him in hushed tones. "Did you see him yesterday? He worked alongside us for hours, never complaining," one said, admiration clear in his voice. "Perhaps these humans are more worthy than we thought," another replied. As word of Powell's hands-on approach spread, public opinion began to shift. Even some of the more conservative Nausicaans found themselves reconsidering their stance on human integration. However, not everyone was pleased with this turn of events. In the opulent halls of the imperial palace, Princess Keed found herself cornered by a group of stern-faced nobles. "Your Highness," Lord Krasnak sneered, his voice dripping with disdain, "surely you see the folly in this dalliance with the human ambassador. It's time you considered a more suitable match." Keid's eyes flashed with defiance. "My personal affairs are not a matter for public debate, Lord Krasnak." As she stormed away, Keid's mind raced. She knew she needed allies, and fast. That evening, she convened a secret meeting with a select group of progressive courtiers, laying the groundwork for a network that would support her relationship with Powell and the broader cause of human-Nausicaan cooperation. Meanwhile, Powell's worst fears were realized when alarms blared across multiple terraforming sites. The Purity Vanguard had launched a coordinated assault, their weapons tearing through vital infrastructure. Powell was inspecting a newly installed atmospheric regulator when the attack began. The ground shook as explosions ripped through nearby buildings. Without hesitation, he sprung into action. "Everyone to the emergency shelters," he shouted, guiding panicked workers to safety. As debris rained down around them, Powell worked side by side with Nausicaan security forces, coordinating evacuation efforts and helping the injured. In the chaos, he found himself face-to-face with a masked attacker. The Nausicaan extremist raised his weapon, but Powell was faster. With a swift move, he disarmed his assailant and subdued him, earning a look of shocked respect from a nearby Nausicaan guard. As the dust settled, the true cost of the attack became clear. The terraforming project had suffered significant setbacks, and dozens of workers were injured. Yet amid the destruction, a new sentiment began to emerge. Nausicaan workers who had witnessed Powell's actions during the crisis spoke of his bravery and leadership. Stories of the human ambassador who risked his life to save Nausicaan lives spread quickly, reaching even the most remote corners of the empire. In the aftermath of the attack, King Zorthax summoned Powell and Harrison to the throne room. The king's face was a mask of hardly restrained fury as he paced before them. "This cannot stand," Zorthax growled. "Commander Harrison, I am entrusting you with leading a joint task force to root out these extremists. You will have full access to our intelligence resources." Harrison bowed deeply. "It would be my honor, Your Majesty." Powell seized the moment, stepping forward with a proposal he had been formulating since the attack. "Your Majesty, if I may, this crisis has shown the strength of human-Nausicaan cooperation. Perhaps it's time we formalize this partnership." Zorthax's eyes narrowed. "Speak plainly, Ambassador." "A joint security council," Powell explained, his voice steady, "comprised of both human and Nausicaan representatives. It would not only help us combat threats like the Purity Vanguard, but also serve as a foundation for deeper integration between our peoples." The throne room fell silent as Zorthax considered the proposal. After what felt like an eternity, the king spoke. "An intriguing idea, Ambassador. I will consider it." As Powell and Harrison left the palace, a sense of cautious optimism filled the air. They had taken a significant step forward, but both men knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Their fears were confirmed when reports began trickling in of unrest among other alien civilizations. Ambassadors from neighboring species demanded audiences with King Zorthax, their messages tinged with suspicion and concern over humanity's rising influence. Powell found himself working around the clock, balancing the demands of the terraforming project, navigating the complex political landscape of the imperial court, and addressing the growing interstellar tensions. One evening, as he pored over diplomatic reports in his quarters, Princess Keed entered, her face a mixture of perseverance and worry. "Andrew," she said softly, "we need to talk about the future. Our future." Powell looked up, sensing the weight of her words. As they began to discuss the challenges ahead, both personal and political, the fate of two species and the delicate balance of the Galactic Empire hung in the balance. "Balance!" Powell took a deep breath, steeling himself for the conversation ahead. "Kaid, he began, but was interrupted by an urgent knock at the door. Commander Harrison burst in, his face flushed with excitement. "Powell, you need to see this." They rushed to the command center, where a holographic display showed the terraforming site. Powell's eyes widened as he took in the scene. Where once there was barren rock, now lush vegetation sprouted from rich, dark soil. The atmosphere, once thin and hostile, now shimmered with a blue tint reminiscent of Earth's skies. Dr. Elena Reeves, her hair disheveled and eyes bright with triumph, turned to face them. "Ambassador, we've done it. The new atmospheric stabilization technique works better than we ever imagined." Powell's heart raced as he absorbed the implications. How long until the planet is fully habitable? "At this rate," Dr. Reeves replied, her voice brimming with pride, "we're looking at years instead of decades." The news spread like wildfire through the imperial palace. King Zorthax himself arrived to witness the breakthrough, his massive frame dwarfing the human scientists as he examined their work. "Impressive," the king rumbled, his eyes gleaming with approval. "You have exceeded our expectations, Ambassador Powell." As Powell basked in the glow of success, a shadow fell across the room. A Nausicaan aide approached, his face grave. "Your Majesty, we've received an urgent communication from the Zorgon Empire." The mood in the room shifted instantly. The Zorgons, known for their technological prowess and isolationist tendencies, had long been a looming presence on the edges of imperial space. Within hours, Powell found himself in the Imperial Council chamber, facing the holographic visage of Ambassador Krellex. The Zorgon's elongated features twisted into a sneer as he delivered his ultimatum. "The Zorgon Empire cannot stand idly by while you upset the balance of power in this sector," Krellex hissed. "Cease this terraforming project immediately and withdraw your offer of human admission to the Empire, or face the consequences." A tense silence fell over the chamber. Powell's mind raced, calculating the potential fallout of each option. Before he could speak, King Zorthax rose to his full height, his voice thunderous. "You dare threaten the Nausicaan Empire? We will not be bullied by your posturing, Ambassador Krellex." As the hologram flickered out, Powell knew the real work was just beginning. He and Princess Keed spent the next several days in a whirlwind of meetings, pleading their case to every member of the Imperial Council. Their efforts seemed to be paying off when disaster struck. Powell was inspecting the primary atmospheric processing facility when a massive explosion rocked the structure. Alarms blared as smoke filled the air, and panicked workers scrambled for safety. Ignoring the searing heat and choking fumes, Powell plunged into the chaos. He helped guide injured workers to safety, his voice cutting through the panic with clear, calm instructions. As he led a group of trapped Nausicans through a collapsing corridor, a secondary explosion knocked him off his feet. When Powell regained consciousness, he found himself in the Imperial Medical Center, Princess Keed at his bedside. Her face was etched with worry, but her eyes shone with pride. "You saved dozens of lives," she said softly, "both human and Nausicaan. The entire Empire has seen the footage." As Powell recovered, events moved swiftly. Commander Harrison uncovered evidence linking Lord Krasnak to the Zorgon ambassador, exposing a plot to sabotage the terraforming project and overthrow King Zorthax. The king's fury was terrible to behold. Lord Krasnak was arrested on the spot, and Ambassador Krellex was unceremoniously expelled from Naus Prime. In the wake of these events, King Zorthax made an unprecedented announcement. Not only would Earth be admitted into the Galactic Empire, but Powell himself would be appointed as the first human member of the Imperial High Council. The news sent shockwaves through both human and Nausicaan society. While many celebrated the decision, others viewed it with suspicion and fear. General Vexcor, a decorated military commander known for his xenophobic views, began to rally the conservative factions. As Powell prepared to assume his new role, he found himself facing an impossible choice. King Zorthax, still uncertain about the implications of a human-Nausicaan union, issued an ultimatum. Powell could either accept the position on the High Council or pursue a formal courtship with Princess Keed, but not both. Torn between his duty to Earth and his growing feelings for Keed, Powell retreated to his quarters to contemplate his decision. The weight of two worlds rested on his shoulders. His contemplation was interrupted by an urgent transmission. The Zorgon fleet was massing at the edge of Imperial space, their intentions clear. The threat of war loomed large, testing the newly forged human-Nausicaan alliance. As Powell stared out at the glittering expanse of Naus Prime, he knew that his next actions would shape the future of human-Nausicaan relations for generations to come. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but also filled with possibility. With a deep breath, he squared his shoulders and prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Powell stood at the window, his reflection barely visible against the backdrop of Naus Prime's glittering cityscape. The weight of King Zorthax's ultimatum pressed down on him, each option carrying immense consequences for Earth, the Nausicaan Empire, and his own heart. With a deep breath, he turned to face Princess Keed, who watched him with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Keed," he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil within, "I've made my decision. I must accept the position on the Imperial High Council." A flicker of pain crossed Keed's face, quickly replaced by a mask of regal composure. "I understand," she said softly. "It's the right choice for your people, and for the Empire." Powell took a step towards her, his hand reaching out before falling back to his side. "I want you to know that this doesn't change how I feel about you, but Earth's future in the Empire is more important than our personal desires," Keed finished for him. She straightened her posture, every inch the Imperial Princess. "You have my full support, Ambassador Powell, or should I say, Counselor." The formal title stung, but Powell nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Your Highness. Your support means more than you know." As news of Powell's appointment spread, the reaction throughout the Empire was swift and varied. Many hailed it as a progressive step towards true integration, while others, particularly in General Vexcor's camp, saw it as a threat to Nausicaan supremacy. Powell's first High Council meeting was a baptism by fire. As he entered the opulent chamber, the tension was palpable. General Vexcor's supporters eyed him with barely concealed hostility, while others regarded him with curiosity or cautious optimism. King Zorthax's voice boomed across the room, silencing all chatter. "Counselors, we face a grave threat. The Zorgon fleet masses at our borders, their intentions clear. What solutions do you propose?" Powell stood acutely aware of all eyes upon him. "Your Majesty, honored counselors, I believe I have a strategy that could turn the tide in our favor." He activated a holographic display in the center of the room, showing schematics of a sleek, powerful starship. "I propose we develop a new class of hybrid warships, combining the best of human and Nausicaan technology. Our propulsion systems, your weapons technology, together they could create a force unmatched in the galaxy." The room erupted into a cacophony of voices. General Vexcor rose, his massive frame towering over the other counselors. "This is preposterous. We should rely on our own strength, not untested human gadgetry." "With all due respect, General," Powell countered, keeping his voice level, "it's precisely this combination of our strengths that the Zorgons won't expect. It could give us the edge we need." The debate raged on, with counselors taking sides. Powell found unexpected allies in the more progressive members, who saw the potential in his plan. As the arguments reached a fever pitch, King Zorthax raised a hand for silence. "Enough," the king declared. "The threat we face requires bold action. Counselor Powell's plan has merit. I approve the project, effective immediately." General Vexcor's face darkened with rage, but he bowed stiffly to the king's decision. Powell knew he had made a powerful enemy, but he had no time to dwell on it. The real work was just beginning. The hybrid warship project, dubbed Operation Starburst, quickly became the talk of the Empire. Powell worked tirelessly, coordinating between human engineers and Nausicaan shipwrights. Dr. Elena Reeves led the human contingent, her brilliant mind tackling the complex integration of Earth's propulsion systems with Nausicaan weaponry. The project faced numerous setbacks. Cultural clashes between human and Nausicaan workers led to delays. Technical incompatibilities between the two species' technologies required innovative solutions. Through it all, Powell remained a constant presence, mediating disputes and pushing the teams to overcome each obstacle. As weeks turned into months, progress on Operation Starburst coincided with a major breakthrough in the terraforming project. Powell stood with Dr. Reeves on a viewing platform, watching in awe as lush vegetation spread across the once barren landscape of the nearby planet. "It's beautiful," Powell murmured, his eyes fixed on the sea of green below. Dr. Reeves nodded, her face glowing with pride. "The atmospheric stabilization technique worked even better than we hoped. We've created large habitable zones years ahead of schedule." The success of the terraforming project didn't go unnoticed. Within days, a sleek ship bearing the insignia of the Atlari Confederation entered orbit around Naus Prime. Powell found himself facing a new challenge as he prepared to welcome the Atlari delegation. The Atlari ambassador, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin, regarded Powell with keen interest. "We have observed your progress with great interest, Counselor Powell. The Atlari Confederation is intrigued by the possibilities of collaboration." Powell recognized the opportunity before him. An alliance with the Atlari could shift the balance of power in the sector, potentially deterring Zorgon aggression. He chose his words carefully. "The Galactic Empire welcomes the opportunity for cooperation, Ambassador. Perhaps you would be interested in touring our terraforming project. We believe our combined expertise could yield remarkable results." As Powell began delicate negotiations with the Atlari, tensions with the Zorgons reached a boiling point. Reports of raids on outlying Imperial colonies sent shockwaves through the Empire. The pressure to complete the hybrid warships intensified, with General Vexcor using each attack to argue for a return to traditional Nausicaan military doctrine. In a heated council session, Vexcor banged his hand on the table. "Enough of these human experiments! We must strike now, with the full might of our fleet." Powell stood to address the council, keenly aware that the fate of Earth's position in the Empire hung in the balance. "Counselors, I understand the General's frustration, but a preemptive strike could escalate this conflict beyond our control. The hybrid warships are nearly complete. If we can secure an alliance with the Atlari—" "More delays," Vexcor interrupted. "While we wait, our people suffer." The council chamber erupted into arguments. Powell locked eyes with King Zorthax, whose expression remained inscrutable. As the debate raged on, Powell knew that his next moves would determine not just the outcome of the Zorgon conflict, but the future of human-Nausicaan relations for generations to come. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and Powell knew his next actions would be crucial. As the council session adjourned, Powell's communicator chirped with an urgent message. Dr. Elena Reeves's face appeared on the small screen, her eyes bright with excitement. "Counselor, we've done it. The ISS Unity is ready for its maiden voyage." Powell's heart raced. The hybrid warship, the culmination of months of grueling work and collaboration, was finally complete. This could be the game changer they needed. "Excellent work, Doctor. I'll be there shortly." As Powell made his way to the shipyard, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was coming to a head. The Zorgon threat, the tensions within the Empire, and now this potential breakthrough. It all seemed to be converging. The ISS Unity was a sight to behold. Its sleek lines blended Nausicaan aesthetic with human engineering precision, a physical embodiment of their alliance. As Powell approached, he made a decision that would alter the course of events. "Dr. Reeves," he said, his voice firm, "I'll be leading the test flight personally." The human engineer's eyes widened. "But Counselor, the risks—" "Are necessary," Powell finished. "This project needs to succeed, and I need to show my full commitment to it." As word of Powell's decision spread, reactions varied across the Empire. In the shadows of the Imperial Palace, General Vexcor's eyes narrowed as he received the news. The human's boldness was unexpected, but it presented an opportunity. "Track Nor?" Vexcor growled to a lean, scarred Nausicaan standing nearby. "The plan has changed. Infiltrate the shipyard tonight. Ensure the Unity never completes its maiden voyage." The engineer nodded silently and slipped away into the night. Unbeknownst to the conspirators, their whispered plans hadn't gone unnoticed. Princess Kaid, her royal training allowing her to move unseen through the palace corridors, had overheard everything. Her heart raced as she hurried to her father's chambers. King Zorthax listened gravely as his daughter recounted Vexacor's plot. His massive form seemed to grow even larger as anger swelled within him. "We cannot allow this treachery," he rumbled, "and yet to move against Vexacor now would alert his conspirators." The king's eyes narrowed in thought. "We will increase security at the shipyard, but the test flight must proceed. It may be our only chance to expose this rot within our ranks." As dawn broke over Naus Prime, Powell stood before the assembled crew of the ISS Unity. Humans and Nausicans stood side by side, a visual representation of the cooperation that had brought them to this moment. "Today, we make history," Powell began, his voice carrying across the hangar. "Not just for the success of our technology, but for the strength of our alliance. Each of you represents the best of your species, and together, we will show the galaxy what we can achieve." The crew boarded the ship, systems humming to life as they took their stations. Powell settled into the captain's chair, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "All systems check out, Counselor," reported the Nausicaan helmsman, his gravelly voice tinged with excitement. "Then let's see what she can do," Powell replied. "Take us up." The ISS Unity rose gracefully from its berth, its revolutionary engines barely whispering as it ascended through the atmosphere. Powell felt a surge of pride as the ship responded flawlessly to every command. But as they breached the upper atmosphere, alarms suddenly blared across the bridge. The ship lurched violently, nearly throwing Powell from his seat. "Report," he shouted over the cacophony. "Propulsion systems failing," the human engineer called back, her fingers flying over her console. "We're losing altitude fast." Powell's mind raced. This was no mere malfunction. It had to be sabotage. But there was no time to dwell on that now. They were plummeting back towards Naus Prime, and if they didn't act fast, the Unity would become a very expensive crater. Drawing on years of piloting experience, Powell took manual control of the vessel. "Reroute all available power to the starboard thrusters," he ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. The Nausicaan crew members watched in awe as Powell's hands danced across the controls, combining human piloting techniques with the Nausicaan technology in ways they'd never seen before. Slowly, agonizingly, the Unity's descent began to level off. "Brace for impact," Powell called out as the ship skimmed the treetops of a dense forest. With a final burst from the thrusters, he guided the crippled vessel into a clearing, the Unity's hull groaning in protest as it skidded to a stop. As the dust settled, Powell looked around the bridge. Despite the rough landing, his crew was intact, human and Nausicaan alike looking at him with newfound respect. "Well done, everyone," he said, allowing himself a small smile. "Now, let's figure out what went wrong." Back on Naus Prime, King Zorthax watched the unfolding events with a mixture of anger and pride. The sabotage attempt had failed, and Powell's skillful handling of the crisis had only served to strengthen the bonds between humans and Nausicans. "General Vexacor," the king's voice boomed across the throne room, "you are under arrest for treason against the Empire." As Imperial guards led the sputtering general away, Princess Keed stepped forward. "Father," she said, her voice steady, "I believe it's time we take a more active role in supporting Counselor Powell's initiatives." King Zorthax nodded slowly, a plan forming in his mind. "Indeed, my daughter, I believe it's time for some significant changes in our empire." As Powell and his crew worked to repair the Unity, unaware of the political earthquake happening back in the capital, a sleek ship bearing the insignia of the Atlari Confederation dropped out of warp in high orbit. The galaxy, it seemed, was watching the birth of a new era with great interest. As the Atlari ship descended through Naus Prime's atmosphere, Powell couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would define the future of the Empire. He straightened his uniform and strode onto the landing pad, flanked by a mixed honor guard of humans and Nausicans. The ship's hatch opened with a soft hiss, revealing the Atlari delegation. Their iridescent skins shimmered in the sunlight as they glided down the ramp. Powell stepped forward to greet them, his hand extended in the universal gesture of peace. "Welcome to Naus Prime," he said, his voice carrying across the pad. "I'm Grand Admiral Andrew Powell." The lead Atlari, a being of ethereal beauty, inclined its head. I am Zandri, emissary of the Atlari Confederation. We have watched your progress with great interest, Admiral Powell. As Powell led the delegation to the conference room, alarms blared across the Capitol. A harried aide rushed up, his face pale. Sir, urgent news from the outer sectors. The Zorgons, they're here. Powell's blood ran cold. He turned to Zandri, whose multifaceted eyes reflected concern. It seems our discussions will have to wait, emissary. We're facing an immediate threat. Zandri nodded solemnly. Perhaps this is an opportunity for the Atlari to demonstrate our commitment to potential allies. Within hours, Powell found himself in the Imperial War Room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching Zorgon Armada. The sheer size of the invasion force sent murmurs of dismay through the assembled leaders. King Zorthax's voice cut through the chatter. Grand Admiral Powell, what is your assessment? Powell studied the tactical displays, his mind racing. Years of human military training, combined with his newfound understanding of Nausicaan and Atlari capabilities. A plan began to form. We can't match them ship for ship, Powell began, his voice steady. But we don't have to. We'll use their numbers against them. He outlined his strategy, pointing out key positions on the star chart. As he spoke, he could see the doubt in some Nausicaan eyes transform into grudging respect. Even the Atlari observers leaned forward, intrigued by the audacity of his plan. The ISS Unity will lead a small fleet here. Powell indicated a point near the Empire's outer defenses. We'll make it look vulnerable, irresistible to the Zorgons. Meanwhile, the bulk of our forces will hide here, in the Crimson Nebula. General Krasnok, who had replaced the disgraced Vexcor, growled skeptically. A risky gambit, human. If the Zorgons don't take the bait. They will, Powell assured him. The Unity represents everything they fear about our alliance. They won't be able to resist the chance to destroy it. As preparations for the battle intensified, Powell found an unexpected ally in Princess Keed. She approached him as he was overseeing final modifications to the Unity's weapon systems. Admiral, she said, her voice low, I've been analyzing the Zorgon attack patterns from previous encounters. There's a potential weakness in the Unity's shield harmonics that could leave it vulnerable. Powell's eyebrows rose. He hadn't expected this level of technical insight from the princess. Show me, he said, gesturing to a nearby console. For the next hour, they worked side by side, human and Nausicaan engineering teams scrambling to implement the fix. As they worked, Powell felt a new respect growing for the princess. Her technical acumen, combined with her political savvy, could make her a powerful force in the Empire's future. With the fleet assembled and the trap set, Powell took his place on the Unity's bridge. He looked around at the mixed crew of humans and Nausicaans, each focused intently on their stations. This was the moment of truth. All ships prepare for warp, Powell ordered. Operation Starburst is go. The Unity surged forward, leading its small escort fleet to the designated ambush point. As they dropped out of warp, the vastness of space seemed to hold its breath. Then on the edge of sensor range, the first Zorgon ships appeared. Hundreds, then thousands of hostile contacts flooded the tactical displays. Powell's eyes hardened, but he kept his voice calm as he issued orders. Defensive Formation Theta, bring weapons online but hold fire until my command. The Zorgon fleet approached, their enormous dreadnoughts dwarfing even the largest Nausicaan vessels. Powell watched as they took the bait, focusing their attention on the seemingly vulnerable Unity and its escorts. Steady, Powell murmured, more to himself than the crew. Steady. The first Zorgon salvos flashed across space, impacting the Unity's shields. The ship shuddered, but held firm. Now, Powell barked, signal the fleet. From the roiling gases of the Crimson Nebula, the combined fleet erupted. Nausicaan battlecruisers, sleek human destroyers, and the otherworldly shapes of Atlari bioships swarmed from their hiding place. The Zorgons, caught in a perfect pincer movement, found themselves suddenly fighting for survival. Powell's voice rang out across the comms, coordinating the attack with precision. Human tactical innovations meshed seamlessly with Nausicaan firepower and Atlari biotechnology. The Zorgon fleet, for all its size, began to falter under the onslaught. But the battle was nowhere near the end. A massive Zorgon dreadnought broke through the defensive line, heading straight for the Unity. Powell's hands flew over the controls as he took personal command of the ship. "Evasive maneuvers," he called out. "Prepare for close-quarters combat." What followed was a deadly dance between the two vessels. Powell's piloting skills, honed through years of experience, allowed the Unity to outmaneuver its larger opponent. They ducked and weaved through the chaos of the larger battle, exchanging fire at point-blank range. With a series of precisely timed maneuvers, Powell brought the Unity in close to the Dreadnought's engines. "All weapons, fire!" he ordered. The combined firepower of human and Nausicaan weapons tore into the Zorgon ship's vulnerable stern. Explosions blossomed along its hull, and the massive vessel began to list. As the Dreadnought fell away, crippled, Powell saw their opportunity. The Zorgon command ship was attempting to retreat, its escort screen thinned by the ferocity of the combined fleet's attack. "Prepare a boarding party," Powell ordered, his eyes gleaming with willpower. "We're going to end this, here and now." As the Unity moved to intercept the fleeing command ship, Powell assembled his team. Humans in sleek combat suits stood shoulder to shoulder with hulking Nausicaan warriors and shimmering Atlari commandos. Each brought unique strengths to the mission, a living embodiment of the alliance Powell had worked so hard to forge. "This is our chance to end the war," Powell told them as they prepared to board. "But remember, we're not just fighting for victory. We're fighting for a future where all our peoples can coexist in peace." With that, the airlock cycled open, and they plunged into the unknown depths of the Zorgon command ship, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. The Zorgon command ship's corridors echoed with the sounds of battle as Powell and his mixed team of humans, Nausicaans, and Atlari fought their way to the bridge. Plasma bolts sizzled past, leaving scorch marks on the metallic walls. Powell ducked behind a bulkhead, his combat suit's sensors feeding him real-time data on enemy positions. "Crag, take point," he ordered. The massive Nausicaan warrior nodded, hefting his disruptor cannon and surging forward with a roar. Atlari commandos glided alongside, their bioweapons pulsing with otherworldly energy. Powell felt a surge of pride as he watched the diverse team work in perfect harmony. This was what he had fought for, unity in the face of adversity. As they breached the command center, Powell came face to face with the Zorgon Supreme Commander. The alien's eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed in defiance. "It's over," Powell said, his voice firm but not unkind. "Your fleet is in ruins. Surrender, and we can end this without further bloodshed." For a tense moment, Powell thought the Zorgon would refuse. Then slowly, the alien lowered its weapons. "We yield," it hissed. As the news of victory spread across the combined fleet, cheers erupted over the comms. Powell allowed himself a small smile before turning his attention to the monumental task ahead. Weeks passed, and the euphoria of victory gave way to the complex reality of post-war integration. Powell stood before a gathering of human, Nausicaan, Atlari, and newly surrendered Zorgon officers in the Grand Hall of the Imperial Palace on Naus Prime. "Our victory was not just over an enemy," Powell began, his voice carrying across the hushed room. "It was a triumph of cooperation, of diverse peoples coming together for a common cause. Now, we face an even greater challenge, forging a lasting peace." He outlined his integration program, pairing Zorgon units with their former adversaries. The room buzzed with mixed reactions, hope, skepticism, and in some cases, outright hostility. A grizzled Nausicaan general growled, "How can we trust these creatures? They've been our enemies for generations." Before Powell could respond, an unexpected voice rang out. "And yet, here they stand, ready to work alongside us." Princess Kaid stepped forward, her regal bearing commanding attention. "If we cling to old hatreds, we are no better than our former selves." Powell nodded gratefully to Kaid, their eyes meeting briefly. He couldn't help but notice the way the light caught her scaled skin, highlighting her fierce beauty. As the meeting adjourned, King Zorthax approached Powell. "Walk with me, Grand Admiral," he rumbled. They strolled through the palace gardens, the alien flora a riot of color and bizarre shapes. The king was silent for a long moment before speaking. "You have done much for our empire, Powell. Perhaps more than I initially believed possible." Powell inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only wish to serve the greater good." Zorthax's multiple eyes blinked in a pattern Powell had come to recognize as thoughtfulness. "And what of your personal aspirations?" Powell's heart rate quickened. Was the king referring to— "My daughter speaks highly of you," Zorthax continued. "Should you choose to pursue a deeper connection with her, know that you would not face opposition from the throne." Before Powell could formulate a response, alarms blared across the palace grounds. An aide rushed up, his face pale beneath his scales. "Your Majesty, Grand Admiral, we're receiving reports of a massive energy signature at the edge of known space. Our probes, they're going dark as soon as they approach." Powell's mind raced, personal matters pushed aside by the weight of duty. "Assemble a joint expedition team immediately. We need our best and brightest from all allied species, including the Zorgans." As preparations for the expedition began, Powell found himself working closely with Princess Keed. Her technical expertise proved invaluable as they outfitted the ships with the latest in hybrid technology. "This energy signature," Keed mused, poring over the data, "it's like nothing we've ever encountered." Powell nodded, acutely aware of her proximity. "All the more reason to approach with caution. I'm putting Commander Harrison in charge of the expedition." Keid looked up, surprise evident in her expression. "Not you." "As much as I'd like to go, my place is here," Powell replied, "coordinating our efforts, maintaining the stability of our alliance. It's a delicate time." Keid's hand brushed his, sending a jolt through Powell's system. "A wise decision, Admiral. The Empire needs you here." Weeks passed, and Powell found himself dividing his time between overseeing the integration efforts and anxiously awaiting news from the expedition. The political situation remained tense, with some factions pushing for a more aggressive stance towards the unknown threat. It was during a particularly heated council session that the message came through. Commander Harrison's holographic form materialized in the center of the chamber, his expression a mix of awe and concern. "Grand Admiral, Your Majesty," Harrison began, his voice tinged with static. "We've discovered— well, it's easier if I show you." The hologram shifted, revealing a massive structure floating in the void of space. Its architecture was like nothing Powell had ever seen, all sweeping lines and impossible angles that seemed to bend reality itself. "It's some kind of ancient space station," Harrison continued. "But sir, that's not the half of it. When we attempted to board, we triggered something. This station, it's a weapon, a superweapon capable of destroying entire star systems." The council chamber erupted into chaos. Powell raised his voice to be heard above the din. "Commander, what's its current status?" Harrison's image flickered. "Dormant, for now. But sir, we've detected power fluctuations. Whatever we activated, it's slowly coming to life. We estimate we have days, maybe a week at most, before it reaches full capacity." Powell's mind raced, weighing options and potential outcomes. He turned to King Zorthax, who nodded gravely. "Council members," Powell addressed the assembly, his voice cutting through the panic. "We face an unprecedented threat, but also an unparalleled opportunity. I propose we assemble a joint research team, the finest minds from all our allied species, including our Zorgon colleagues." Murmurs of dissent rose from several Nausicaan counselors. General Krasnok stepped forward, his voice a menacing growl. "This technology is too powerful to share. Only pure Nausicaan crews should be allowed to study and control it." The chamber teetered on the edge of a diplomatic crisis. Powell opened his mouth to argue, but Princess Keed beat him to it. "Esteemed Council," she began, her voice ringing with authority, "let us not forget how we achieved victory against the Zorgans. It was not through isolation, but through unity. Grand Admiral Powell's plan offers us the best chance of not only neutralizing this threat, but advancing our entire civilization." Her impassioned speech swayed many of the undecided council members. King Zorthax nodded approvingly, but Powell could see that some opposition remained. As the council debated, another transmission came through. Commander Harrison's face was grim. "Sir, the station's power levels are rising faster than we anticipated. We've detected energy buildups consistent with weapons charging. Whatever this thing is, it's waking up, and it doesn't seem friendly." Powell exchanged a look with Princess Kaid. The fate of the Empire, perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. There was no more time for debate. "Prepare my ship," Powell ordered, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "I'm leading this mission personally." As the council erupted into fresh arguments, Powell strode from the chamber, Kaid close behind. They had precious little time to assemble a team and formulate a plan. The ancient superweapon awaited, its mysteries promising either salvation or annihilation for all they held dear. Powell's ship cut through the void of space, its engines humming with terrifying power. The ancient station loomed before them, its alien architecture a stark contrast to the sleek lines of their vessel. As they approached, energy readings from the superweapon spiked dramatically, causing alarms to blare throughout the ship. "All hands, prepare for docking," Powell announced over the intercom, his voice steady despite the tension evident in his posture. Princess Kaid stood beside him on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the rapidly approaching structure. The docking procedure was tense but smooth, the ship's systems interfacing with the station's ancient technology. As the airlock cycled open, Powell led his team into the unknown. The sight that greeted them was beyond anything they had imagined. The station's interior pulsed with life, its walls covered in swirling, organic-looking technology that seemed to react to their presence. Tendrils of light danced across surfaces, forming intricate patterns before dissolving and reforming elsewhere. "Fascinating," breathed Dr. Shin, the team's xenobiologist. "It's as if the station itself is alive." Powell nodded, his eyes scanning their surroundings. "Stay alert. We don't know what kind of defenses this place might have." As they ventured deeper into the station, they encountered increasingly complex security measures. Each challenge seemed tailored to test their diverse abilities. A massive energy barrier blocked their path, its surface crackling with dangerous levels of power. Powell turned to Crag, the Nausicaan warrior. "Think you can handle this?" Crag grinned, his tusk gleaming in the ethereal light. "With pleasure, Admiral." The Nausicaan approached the barrier, channeling his species' natural affinity for energy manipulation. With a grunt of effort, he created a temporary gap in the field, allowing the team to pass through. Further in, they encountered a bio-locked door, its surface covered in pulsating organic material. This time, it was Zara, the Atlari commando, who stepped forward. Her bioluminescent skin glowed as she interfaced with the door's alien biology, coaxing it open with gentle touches and soft trills in her native language. Even the Zorgan members of the team found their unique abilities put to the test. When faced with a chamber filled with volatile energy currents, it was Rektor, a former Zorgan weapons officer, who navigated them safely through by predicting and redirecting the energy flows. As they worked together to overcome each obstacle, Powell noticed a change in the team's dynamics. The former rivals were starting to rely on each other, their initial distrust giving way to a grudging respect and even camaraderie. Finally, they reached what appeared to be the central control chamber. The room was dominated by a massive holographic display, currently dark and inactive. As Powell approached, the system sprang to life, projecting the image of a being unlike any they had encountered before. The hologram spoke, its voice resonating not just in their ears but in their minds as well. "Greetings, Seekers. You have passed the initial trials and proven your ability to work together. Now, witness the truth of our legacy." The display shifted, showing scenes from an unimaginably ancient past. The team watched in awe as the history of a long-extinct race called the Precursors unfolded before them. "We were the first to achieve galactic civilization," the narration continued. "But we foresaw a time when we would no longer exist. This station, and others like it, were created as a test for emerging civilizations. The superweapon you fear was never meant to be used. It is a catalyst, designed to bring diverse species together in the face of a common threat." Powell's mind raced as he processed this information. He turned to his team, seeing the same realization dawning on their faces. Don't you see? Deactivating the weapon isn't enough. We need to prove we've learned the lesson of unity. With time running out and the superweapon's energy levels reaching critical, Powell outlined a daring plan. Each species representative took up a position around the central core, ready to contribute their unique abilities. On my mark, Powell called out, his voice steady despite the enormous pressure. Crag, channel the power. Zara, interface with the biological components. Rector, redirect the energy flow. Everyone else, be ready to support and adapt. As Powell coordinated their efforts, the chamber came alive with activity. Crag roared as he wrestled with vast amounts of energy, his muscles straining under the effort. Zara's skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as she communicated with the station's organic systems. Rector's eyes glowed as he manipulated complex energy fields with precision born of years of weapons research. Human crew members darted between stations, making split-second adjustments based on Powell's strategic insights. The air crackled with tension and energy as the diverse team worked in perfect synchronization. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed as if their efforts would be in vain. The superweapon's energy levels continued to climb, threatening to overwhelm them. But then, with a final push of collaborative effort, something changed. The chaotic energy swirling around them suddenly coalesced, forming intricate patterns that mirrored the diversity of the team itself. The superweapon's threatening hum faded, replaced by a harmonious resonance that filled the chamber. As the danger passed, new holographic displays sprang to life around them. The precursor avatar reappeared, its expression now one of approval. "You have succeeded where many have failed," it announced. "You have proven your ability to unite in the face of adversity, to value diversity as a strength rather than a weakness. As a reward, we grant you access to our accumulated knowledge. Use it wisely for the benefit of all." Powell and his team stood in awe as the vast database of precursor knowledge was laid out before them. The potential implications were staggering. Advances in technology, medicine, and understanding that could reshape their entire civilization. As they began to explore this newfound treasure trove of information, Powell's communicator chirped. It was a priority message from King Zorthax himself. "Grand Admiral," the Nausicaan King's voice boomed, "your success has been noted. Return to the capital immediately. There are changes to be discussed." Powell exchanged glances with Princess Keed, sensing that their victory here was just the beginning of a much larger transformation. As they prepared to leave the ancient station, now a beacon of hope rather than a threat, Powell couldn't help but feel that the true challenges and opportunities still lay ahead.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.